Chris ơi, Chris ơi. Ờ,
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? We can use the chat in the upper right corner of this server. Awesome, awesome. Let's just wait a bit, maybe of 2 more minutes until we start, and then yeah, Bruno is here also. But let's wait for 2 minutes, and then we can officially start. Thank you so much for being here on time. We'll start in a few. For now, can you test your mic, Bruno? Maybe you can test it. All right. And we're back. Bruno, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear?
Perfect. Perfect. So I guess we can start anytime. Are you ready?
Yeah, so do a mic check, 1, 2, 3.
Yes, it's
Okay.
perfect.
All right. Yeah. So ready to get started.
Yeah, yeah. To start, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our workshop. Uh, we have a bunch of people here. So for this workshop. This is gonna be about enhancing Polkadot developer experience with Pop. That's why we have Bruno here. I will let Bruno introduce himself, and also Tin, the co-founder, the contributor of OpenGuild also. Um, yeah, so just to take some time and just a minute, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Patricia. I'm part of Open Guild, and I'm thrilled to welcome everyone. But before we dive in and officially start with Dean, so a few quick housekeeping notes. Just drop if you have questions, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We will try to answer with Q&A, maybe if we still have time. And yeah, so please take some notes. And if you find this workshop very helpful, feel free to also promote on X. And yeah, I guess that's it. We're very excited to have everyone here. And I hope you'll find this session very insightful and engaging. So yeah, I guess Tin, you want to take over? Tin? Okay. So I guess we will jump to Bruno already. Bruno, do you want to start?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So let me know if my screen disappears because this is the first time I'm using Discord to present. So hopefully it goes well. Um, so welcome
Yes,
everyone.
it's perfectly.
All right. Cool. So welcome. This presentation, as Pat said, it's about building on Polkadot, right? Building on Polkadot specifically using Pop, the Pop products. My name is Bruno. I'm a co-founder at Rogue, company behind Pop. And the agenda today is we're going to discuss what is Pop. When we say Pop, like you see it on Twitter, Pop this, Pop that, right? What is it? And then we're going to take a little bit of like a definition of like Pop CLI. What is it? What can it do? Pop network, same thing. And how do you get started? So if you like what Pop is, like how do I start as a developer? How would I go about this? And then finally, I'm gonna show you a little demo. Okay. So when we say Pop, it's actually a platform. It's a platform that consists of a family of products that helps developers build Web3 solutions on Polkadot. Specifically, the Pop platform consists right now, currently, of the website on pop.io. You can take a look at that. Our documentation, which we're constantly improving, and then Pop CLI tool. And additionally, Pop Network, which we'll discuss. So the CLI tool, you can think of it as it's a simple way to kind of like build an app chain, a Polkadot app chain, right? Or what we call a parachain. So you can use the CLI to build a parachain. You can use the CLI to uh, spin up a network, a Polkadot network with the parachain that you're building. You can do that all the CLI. And if you're a smart contract developer and you're building smart contracts for Polkadot, CLI also helps you with that. You can build smart contracts. You can test a smart contract. You can deploy the smart contract. You can interact and call the smart contract messages. And you can also, there's like little things within the CLI. Like, for example, whenever I want to test a contract and I'm ready to deploy it, I deploy it and it spins up a node in the background automatically, right? So little features that make smart contract development more pleasant. And when we think about like the CLI tool in terms of parachains and smart contracts, it's hard to get started, especially if you're a newcomer. And so one of the features that the Pop CLI has is it gives you templates. So if you want, you can start with a minimal template for smart contracts or for parachains, or there's a list of different templates that you can pick from. For example, for parachains, there's like an EVM one. I believe there's an NFT one. And then for smart contracts, there's a list of them. I'll see if I can show you at the end in the demo. So what's Pop Network? Pop Network is the answer to how do I deploy a smart contract in Polkadot. So I used to work at Parity a while back, and I worked more on the team that was external facing. It was facing like people who wanted to build on Polkadot, and we would get a lot of teams that were like, "Hey, we built a solution on Ethereum, and we really like Polkadot, and we want to like kind of like build the same thing but on Polkadot. How do we do that?" And our answer at the time was like, "Well, if you want to build on Polkadot, you gotta kind of like you got to build a parachain, you got to build a blockchain." And they're like, "Well, that's too much. We just want to deploy a simple contract, and keep a product going, right?" And we're like, "Well, right now we don't have any parachain where you can deploy a smart contract using Dot, right?" So then finally, like nowadays, like there's initiatives happening. One is Pop Network, the other one's Plaza, right? Polkadot's kind of getting that we need that. We need a way for developers to deploy contracts to Polkadot, right? And Pop Network is one way. Pop Network uses Dot, so you don't have to exchange for some weird token, right? You can interact with Pop Network using Dot and deploy using Dot. Pop Network uses Ink, the Ink programming language, which I think is amazing. So enter Ink. Ink is Rust. Ink is actually a Rust programming language for smart contracts. Ink is Rust with some macro magic, right? So you can think of like, for example, if you're going to write smart contracts, Ink has these macros where you can define storage, you can define errors, you can define events, you can define messages that you want to call. So it makes smart contract development pleasant. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to build all these APIs. If you want to call an account ID, if you want to call blockchain types, it's already built into the language, right? So Ink has all of that. Plus, Ink adheres to the Polkadot APIs. So Ink compiles down to WebAssembly and it runs on pallet contracts. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, additionally, when you're writing in Ink, you're writing in Rust, right? So just keep in mind that the whole entire Polkadot SDK, one of the largest open source projects out there, is built with Rust. So that's a huge investment from my perspective and from my personal development experience. When I'm writing in Rust to create smart contracts, and sometimes I have to debug like Polkadot SDK stuff when I'm working with Ink, right? So like I get some error and it's coming from the module from pallet contracts. And because I'm already working in Rust, I don't have to switch the context in terms of languages, right? So it's all Rust. I think that's a very good pro in terms of like the whole tech stack. So I kind of hinted at this. Ink is native to Polkadot. What does that mean? Well, when Parity built Ink, right? They built the entire Ink programming language, and they built it from the perspective of like, hey, if we're going to build a smart contract programming language for Polkadot, what would that look like? And also, Gav being co-founder of Ethereum and CTO and built Solidity, he created Solidity, right? So enter Parity and Polkadot, like, okay, what do we learn from Solidity? What do we want to prove, right? And hence Ink, right? So Ink is at a very mature level at this point. It's a version 5. And Parity built a palette called Palette Contracts that runs Ink, right? It runs anything it runs WASM, right? So Ink compiles down to native or WASM. When you deploy to production, you want it to be WASM because the WASM is going to run on pallet contracts. It adheres to the pallet contracts API. Okay. So this is something that my colleague showed me the other day, and I thought it was pretty amazing. Like, he's like, what's the difference between like, tell me which one is like on a parachain and which one is on a smart contract, an Inc. smart contract, right? What's the difference there? Like, and it's identical. So when we say Inc. is native to Polkadot, like this is an XCM message that you can craft in a parachain, right? A blockchain, or in an Inc. smart contract. So you don't have to like switch context, nothing. It's like it's very close, right? Very close to the like when you're writing solutions with smart contracts, the learning curve, like if you want to have a team that's building smart contracts on Inc, I think that's the way to go. And if your smart contracts one day like you want to go further into the tech, your team is already prepped that then you could go towards like building a parachain if you'd like. I think that's a great how do you say, like an on-ramp, technical on-ramp. So actually that brings me to the slide. So take a moment and look at that. Building a parachain is hard. So on the left you have development time, and on the bottom you have difficulty. Writing Inc. smart contracts is easy. You can do it in a few minutes, right? I mean, obviously, there's more complexity when you want to create a business logic on there. It takes more time, but it's easy. The hard part is figuring out your business logic. Whereas building a parachain with Frame is inside the Polkadot SDK repo. There's Substrate framework, right? Inside the Substrate framework, there's Frame. So Frame is kind of like Legos for logic, business logic, right? Consists of a number of palettes, and you don't have to rewrite code for balances. You don't have to rewrite code for staking or code for NFTs, code for fungibles, assets, right? It's already written for you. All you got to do is add that palette into your parachain, into your blockchain, and it's there, right? So it's a nice framework, and you can see the learning curve is a bit more there. It's a bit more advanced. And then building a parachain without Frame, you don't see this too often, but if you don't want to use Frame as the framework there for palettes, you want to write a different like implementation, like you want to write it in Go programming language, you could do that, because at the end of the day, the Substrate client or the Substrate node, it runs the WebAssembly runtime, right? So anything that compiles down a WebAssembly and adheres to the APIs, it'll run the host functions. It'll run. So technically, you could do that. That's a lot more advanced. It takes a lot more time. You got to develop that. And then probably the more advanced one is if you want to like customize the node, right? Customize the client, the blockchain client, the parachain client. So why would you do that? Well, maybe you have a custom consensus that you're building into your blockchain, and so that you need to customize the node. Parity has spent years developing the node, right? And they wanted the perspective is that the node is something stable, right? That it shouldn't change too often. Whereas the runtime, it'll change. It'll change. That's fine. It'll iterate, it'll improve, right? Whereas the node, it's just kind of like that thing that just sits there and it does its job very well, right? There's less documentation when it comes to like working with the node in the Polkadot SDK docs. It's a lot more advanced. That's why it's up there, right? So building a parachain is hard. Running a parachain is costly. So if you want to run a parachain, you gotta think about core time. You're gonna have to pay for core time, so that you can get the block space, right? So your parachain can get finalized. The blocks can get finalized. You got to run collators to make sure your parachain is alive, right? You need a super skilled team, right? So as the chain is producing blocks, right? Not only do you need a super skilled team to develop the blockchain, but also you need a super skilled team in case you need to triage the blockchain. So when I worked at Parity, I got to see a lot of situations where parachain teams needed to triage certain issues, right? So you have to have that team that's like really skilled, that if they need to perform a runtime upgrade, right, to fix something, if they need to perform a migration in order for the chain to keep running, in order to fix any bugs that they're already on the chain, right? So you need all of that. And then lastly, you need to incentivize the community, right? If nobody's using your chain, if you have nobody using it, then you have a dead chain, right? Not DED, DEAD, right? So that's actually like it may be the last mark there, the last bullet point, but it may be the most important, right? Because you need to keep, you're paying a lot of money to keep the chain alive. So you need to make sure that people are using it, right? Whereas a smart contract's lightweight, right? You could deploy a smart contract today. It could have business logic and it's really cheap. Okay. So Rust has around, there was an estimate, right? Around 4 million Rust developers nowadays. And there's 26,000 Web3 developers. So if you think about 26,000, that includes Solidity, right? So that's another use case when we think about Ink and why would I work with Ink, right? We when we're building Pop Network, we want to tap into this market, especially for Polkadot, right? We want to diversify the smart contract language, and we want to say we want to bring in like more developers into our ecosystem, right? So Rust is a great investment also for your personal career as a developer because you're learning a programming language that you can take elsewhere, right? Even beyond blockchain use cases, right? So it's a great investment on your part. So in summary, Pop Network, it's a generic Ink smart contract platform where you can deploy Ink smart contracts and it uses Dot, right? But it's more. So what we're building is we're building this additional layer into Pop Network where you can think of like all the Polkadot SDK runtime level features, right? Things that were only accessible before to parachains on the parachain level. We're taking those features one by one and we're hoisting them up, we're elevating them to the smart contract level. So as a smart contract developer, you could use an API to access those Polkadot features, right? Whereas previously you were limited. In order to access those features, you'd have to do an XCM call to another parachain, or you'd have to build a parachain yourself. So how we're doing that is via what we call the Pop API. We're building an API that connects with like runtime level features, and you can also import this API into a smart contract and start using that in your smart contract logic. So when we talk about features, you can see some of those there. There's only a few there. We have a roadmap. So there's a lot of like, when you think of Frame, right? And all the palettes that are inside of Frame, right? The fungibles, assets palette, NFTs palette. There's a number of governance palettes, right? So we're building abstractions to those so that you can access them from the smart contract level. And when I say abstractions, like for example, cross-chain messaging, XCM. XCM is really complicated, right? Even for people who are senior XCM developers, right? It's still confusing and complicated. There's a lot that you need to know and make sure it's all working and all these things. So what we're going to do on our roadmap is we're going to take cross-chain messaging, XCM, we're going to abstract it so you don't have to be an XCM guru in order to tap into cross-chain messaging, right? And things like governance, for example, when you're building a dApp that involves a smart contract, it's often useful to have a DAO, right? So that should be something that's accessible, and you should be able to create a DAO from the sophisticated, excellent governance palettes that already exist in Substrate. So how to get started? So yeah, so let's say you're interested, right? And you're like, okay, how do I use Pop CLI? How do I get started? So I'm gonna exit here for a moment and drop into the terminal. So can you see that terminal? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, okay, so I have Pop already installed. All right, you can see there's a few commands there. Pop new, pop build, pop call, pop up, pop test, pop clean, right? So let's say I want to create a new contract. Pop new contract. And you can see that the first thing that it does, it prompts me for different templates, right? So there's different templates here that you can pick from, to get yourself started. There's like cross contract call, multi-sig contract. So you could start with one of these templates and play around with them. I'm going to start with Flipper. That's like the most basic hello world. And I'll call it Flipper. So, okay, so there it is, CD into Flipper. And, if I can do it less, there it is. There's Flipper. I could pull it up just to show you. Make it larger. So Flipper, right? I think most of you are aware of what Flipper smart contract does. It's just, it flips a value, the value that's inside of storage, right? It flips it. If it's true, it'll flip it to false. If it's false, it'll flip it to true. There's a constructor and there's a flip message. Okay, so say I want to deploy this and I can say pop up contract and the default here or the constructor here, it accepts a Boolean, so we'll say true. And the first thing that it'll do is it checked to see if it was already built, right? And it's like, okay, it's not built and it has to be built in release mode in order to deploy. So what it's doing now, it's gonna build it in release mode and it's gonna deploy it to a substrate contracts node that's already running on my machine. Like if you were to run this on your machine and it doesn't detect that, it'll automatically download a substrate contracts node and run it on port 9944, right? And then when you deploy contracts, you can deploy it there. Now, if you would like to deploy it elsewhere, right, not on substrate contracts node, all you have to do is pass in the RPC URL. So for example, when you go to our POP website, we have here the first page, like deploy contract, right? You click on that button and it takes you to this page here where you can see this one is connected to the POP network testnet. And so if we want to deploy to the POP network testnet, we just have to grab the RPC URL, POP network testnet, and plug it into this command here that I'm running, the pop up command, right? And it'll deploy it to that node, right? So that's one thing. The other thing that I want to share with you is we're actually going to deploy it to a local node, right? Like I said. So we're gonna deploy it using this UI here. And I have the node running. So you can see here, it's already, it's one block has been produced. I deployed a contract earlier, so it's there, right? Oh, there it is. It got deployed, block number 2. I don't know if you see that, I'll make it larger. Block number 2, it just got it produced, right? And you can see the events here, events fired off. So if we go back to the VS Code, okay, deployment complete, contract address, copy that, and just go back to the UI. I like to use this UI to manage my contracts. It's just easier to just like see it, visually. And then I got to get the contract metadata. There it is. And add the contract. So there it is. The contract is there. We can see the different messages, flip and get. And right now it's set to true, right? Because that was the argument, the default argument that I passed. And if I say flip, I can say call contract. I'm using Alice. And it got flipped. So now it should be false. So if I do get, false, right? So that's that's pretty much it in a nutshell. There's other features there like pop test that you can use. As far as like app chain, I want to show you a little bit of that too. So if I say, let me create a new app chain here, make it a little bit larger. Pop new parachain. Same thing, like different templates. So we have some pop templates, we have an Open Zeppelin template, and we have some parity templates, right? So if I go to like pop template, we have the standard, which is like a minimal like hello world parachain template. We have the assets template if you want to play around with assets, fungibles and non-fungibles, NFTs. And we have the palette contracts, right, to run ink template. And we have an EVM template. Okay, so I'm going to start with the hello world template. And it's going to ask you for different release, like which release do you want? I'll just select 14. I'll call it my app chain. I'll call it dot, my token symbol. Instead of 12, I'll do 10. And give it some initial endowment. Yeah, that's good. And there it is. Like, look how fast that was, right? So if I CD into my app chain, so it just built a parachain, right? Just to show you, there it is, right? You have the runtime. There's the runtime, right? If you want to find like construct. Where is it? Down here somewhere. So here it is. Here's the runtime, right? So it's there. Okay, the node is there, chain spec is there, right? So everything is here. It's a great starter. It's a great way to start with a parachain. There's also a network.toml file, right? So you can see this one, it's specifying for the relay chain Rococo local. And we got 2 validators. And then the parachain's going to run on with parachain ID 2000. And it's pulling in from release. So you'd have to compile this and it'll pull it from release. You could change it to debug. I always change it to debug. So I'm not going to compile this because it's going to take forever to compile. I already have one pre-compiled that I did before the session just to show you. So this is like the same thing. It's just called my parachain. So if I do pop up parachain dash file network, I got to specify the network.toml file and I launch it. It's going to spin up a network based on that network.toml file, right? So we should get a Rococo relay chain and the parachain will get onboarded on there. So like, let's copy this. Put it up here. That's a relay chain. So there it is. It's producing blocks already. Right, 6 second. There it is. There's a third one. All right, cool. So if I go back, parachain takes a little bit to get onboarded, but it should, it's probably already producing blocks. Let's see. That's the parachain. So it's still onboarding, right? But you can see it's there. It's going to take like maybe like a minute, and then it's going to start producing blocks. Okay, so we'll come back to this. That's the pop up command, right? So I just wanted to show you that pop up can be really useful. And you can use it to just like spin up like just a relay chain if you want, like spin up the Polkadot relay chain, right? You don't have to necessarily spin up a parachain, or you can use it for several parachains. Okay. And there it is. It's producing blocks. The parachain's producing blocks. All right. So you can now use it. You can test it, right? You can test your parachain. You can interact with it and play with it. And that's it for my presentation today. As far as like community and like if you want to connect, we're a small team of engineers. Okay, so we'd love your feedback. So if you're playing around, let's say with Pop CLI or Pop Network, you see something like easiest thing that you can do, like if you see a bug or an issue, just if you can just log it, report it to us, I would love that. That would help us a lot. Or if you want to contribute open source, we already had some open source contributors. We love that type of engagement and just feedback in general, right? We're building a tool. We want to make sure that it's useful for you guys. So any feedback would be great. And we're on Twitter. So feel free to connect with me on Twitter as well. That's my Twitter handle. And yeah, that's it for today. Any questions? Any comments?
Thank you so much, Bruno. Quick question. So when we send the feedback, where do we send this? When we give a feedback?
So that's a great question. One way you can give the feedback is like on a GitHub issue, right? If it's like something technical, like, oh, I was running Pop CLI and I got this error or this setup thing or whatever, right? Just submit it a GitHub issue and we can triage it from there. Whereas if it's something else, you could just drop in our Telegram channel. We're all there, all the engineers are there. So just drop a message there and we can always like direct you from there, right? The other place is like if you go to the Pop docs, so get started. And there's a section here, smart contracts or app chains, like let's say smart contracts. There's a whole bunch of guides here, right? Like running your unit tests. And you can see on the bottom here, there's a technical support. So if you're stuck, just create a Stack Exchange question, tag it with Pop, and then drop it in our Telegram channel. It's like, hey guys, like this is my issue. Here's the link. Like that's the best. If you can do that, or the GitHub issue, those two, like that, then it's fantastic. Like this is Stack Exchange. I don't know if you guys are all familiar with this, but it's a great way to learn and also to tackle some issues, technical issues.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that. Uh, let me see if Tin, do you want to add something? All right. I don't think I can. No, Tin. Bruno, can you hear Tin or it's just me?
He's muted. And now okay, he's back.
Okay. All right.
Developing, I think we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
so developing smart contracts typically involves dealing with complex concepts like blockchain consensus mechanisms, gas fees, and security consideration. Could Pop CLI provide extensive guidance or tools to simplify these complexity for developers? I would say like at that point, the Polkadot SDK docs is the best resource. Like it would be ideal that one day we could get to that level where we can provide features, mechanisms within Pop CLI or within some other product that we develop uh, to make configuring a blockchain on that level like simpler, right? But you're absolutely right that there are a lot of complexities when modifying a blockchain, specifically a substrate blockchain. But in my experience, like working with substrate, it's I like it. I like Frame. Like I may get heat for this, but I think Frame is fun. Palette development is fun. It's enjoyable the way that the palettes are set up. It's like similar to like the Ink smart contracts where it's like, here's your storage, right? Here are your errors. Here are your dispatchable functions. So that's like another like way where it's like start with smart contracts, and then if you want to like modify, like Shogun was saying, like modify gas fees, consensus mechanisms, then migrate into substrate. We have another question. Does Pop have a feed? Does Pop, where do you go? Oh, does Pop have features support proxy contract or smart contract security best practices? So I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's there's an Ink examples repo, which has a number of smart contracts that you can play around with. Okay. And I do believe they have a proxy one here somewhere. You can also use delegate, the delegate function. Yeah, you'd have to check here, but there's different contracts here that you can take a look at. And then as far as security best practices, so I'd say like use the documentation, like in terms of Ink, use the documentation that's here, right? Currently Ink v5 it's about to get audited by SR Labs. So Ink itself is being audited. Ink v4 was already audited. So I'd say like adhere to the best practices that are shown in the documentation. I also like to look at other like smart contracts, Ink smart contracts that are already in production. So there's one that I really like. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know if you guys ever saw this one, but it's by Cardinal Cryptography. They implemented PSP22, but they did it in a very cool way. They did it in a modular approach. So this really highlights the power of Ink, that you can have your errors in a different Rust file, events in a different Rust file, everything very modular, traits in a different Rust file, and then you import it in here into your smart contract. So it's all broken up, So I think this is a great smart contract to take a look at if you really want to build like a cool smart contract that adheres to, like, this one's adhering to the PSP22 spec. I mean, the CLI, like pop upgrade, new contract, a way to manage contracts easier. Upgrading the version of the contract, or what do you mean by that? Yeah, could you? Oh, version, like from V4 to V5. We don't have that right now. I'd say like if you're going to start smart contract development, I'd say start with V5. V5 has some newer features as well. Like V5 has the ability to do XCM, right? So not cross-chain messaging, but I'm sorry, yeah, it is cross-chain messaging. It's not cross-contract messaging. I did a workshop the other day on cross-contract messaging. Yeah, you can do that. But with V5, you can also do cross-chain messaging with XCM. Do we have any projects that are similar, like Open Zeppelin and Ink ecosystem? Open Zeppelin Ink ecosystem. So there may be, I would have to check on that. I'd have to check with the Open Zeppelin folks. I do think that they may have something, but I'm not quite sure on that one. I'll have to check. Yeah, cross chain, then cross contract, then cross chain. Yeah, but I mean that's one of the features of Polkadot, right? What do you get with Polkadot? You get finality, right? And you get cross chain messaging. Like that's like the big two pillars of Polkadot, right? So we definitely want to tap into that. We want to tap into that ability to cross chain message, and you can do that with Ink. You don't need to build a parachain for that. How can I take advantage of multiple projects in Pop's ecosystem to build my project? I'd say start with Pop Network, building smart contracts on Pop Network. That should be sufficient, and like, try to build a dApp, right? So you could use Inkathon, you could use DDOT, right? You can use for front ends type of stuff, and start there, I'd say. And as you're building it, like you already mentioned a good feature, right? So give us feedback, right? So that we can, if we know what people want, right? We can start slowly including it in our roadmap. What would be effective to include in Pop CLI? Because we're building it like right today. Like when I get off of here, I'm going to be interacting with the rest of the team, right? So we're actively building this, and we want to build a tool that's useful, that lowers the barrier to Polkadot, right? That's where actually our team came from. That when we were working at Parity, we saw that like a lot of people from other ecosystems, they're like, Polkadot's a black box. Like, I don't know how to play with it. Like, it's too complicated, right? And so that's what we're trying to do with the CLI tool. That's what we're trying to do with smart contracts, lowering the barrier to entry, right? So if we can get your help on that, then we can build a better tool, a better product that people want to use, a product that brings more people into Polkadot. Yes. So there's a question, a guide to onboard, like parachain onboarding. Like, so if you go to the guide section on appchain, there's build your parachain, and then there's running your parachain locally. And I just created one called running on Paseo locally, right? Paseo is the new community run Polkadot relay chain testnet. And actually, I'm working this week on a guide to onboard a parachain to the Paseo testnet that's live. So that'll be coming in here. It'll go probably somewhere around here. You'll see it updated later this week or beginning next week. So there's also, from a smart contract perspective of onboarding onto Pop Network, there's this guide here, deploy on Pop testnet. Right. So if you want to deploy a smart contract on a Pop network, which is a parachain, which uses DOT, the guide will walk you through. You got to fund your DOT tokens on the relay chain, right? You got to use the faucet to get some DOT tokens, and then you got to bridge those tokens to Pop network, and then you deploy it. You can use Alice. Okay, so that's all there.
Right. I guess we can conclude with that with the guide on onboarding on Pop Network. Right. Thank you so much, Bruno, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to see some smart contracts and engaging with you all online. Thank you.
Yeah. I've been actually I know Pop already. I've been hearing Pop because of the decoded Sub-Zero, but it's only now that I truly understand what is public play on Polkadot, and it really means like what you said, it's lowering the barrier, um barrier entry to Polkadot tech, right? So in OpenGuild, we're also doing that. We're trying to onboard as much devs in Southeast Asia as much as possible, but the impression that we're always getting is that it's hard to build on Polkadot, or it's very complicated. So with me, like with this experience now, I guess we will always have Pop, with the workshops and the meetup gatherings, because we promote, like convenience and easy to build on Polkadot. I guess Pop would be perfect for that. Thank you so much. This is very
So
helpful even for me, like a non-tech person.
I was in Ho Chi Minh, right, in a blockchain meetup, small group, right, and it was like a bunch of Ethereum developers and Solana, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I got the feedback. They're like, "Oh, Polkadot's really cool, but it's kind of like a black box, and I don't know how to play with it, but I do. How do I play with it, right?" So
Yeah.
hopefully, like this is the beginning, guys. Like hopefully, like what we're building here is an on ramp to Polkadot, right?
Right. Yeah, so keep in touch also for everyone, to conclude this officially. Thank you so much to you, Bruno, for sharing this very, very insightful workshop. And thank you to everyone who joined us tonight and your morning. It's been very good, and for me it's very helpful personally. A lot of key takeaways and very inspiring to build. Hopefully, we can do more with our community to start building on Polkadot through Pop. And so, before we close, just a few quick reminders that if you miss any part of the workshop and you want to revisit the presentation, there will be a recording in our X account at OpenGuild WTF. And we also encourage you to connect with Bruno and with the Pop team. And Bruno shared earlier the QR code, but you can also follow them on X We will post it in our X account later on. And also, please take a moment to fill out our feedback. We will share to you, or we will reach out to everyone to give us more feedback with this workshop session to we can make it better next time. And yeah, so we hope you guys enjoyed today's session and looking forward to have everyone again. That's it. Do you have any last words, Bruno, for tonight?
Looking forward to interacting with you guys online. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
I'll see you guys later. Maybe also Sub-Zero, right? Sub-Zero is going to be coming up, I believe, in November. It's a Polkadot developer conference, and I believe it's
Yes.
going to be in Bangkok. So I hope to see you all there. I'll be there.
Right, right. Yeah. See you there, Bruno. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.